Okay, welcome to today's stream. So what we'll do today, I think we're gonna keep working on emails. This is what we started doing yesterday, and there's still a bit of work ahead of us. So before I get started on this though, I need to mention that I changed the file structure of the app a little bit. And what I mean by that is if you go to the code here, you'll see that the packages directory is almost empty. So if we check it out on GitHub, you can see that it really contains only 4 packages. And that's because I've now hooked up my setup so that it will look for the other packages. So, you know, Vulkan Core, Vulkan Email, Vulkan Forms, and so on in the main Vulkan repository on my local machine. And what this means is I don't have 2 copies of all these packages anymore. I don't have one in the main branch of or the main repository, and then one in the Zen's room copy of that repository. I only have them here. So the advantage is if I modify something here, it will be modified in Zen's room, and so this makes the Zen's room repository lighter, and also it ensures that there's no inconsistencies, that the 2 repos don't get out of sync. So how did I do that? It's actually pretty simple. There's a how-to here in the Zen's room README. So as it says here, by default, since Zen's room doesn't have any local packages, it's going to look for these packages on Atmosphere, which is Meteor's package server. And so that's how it would work by default. And it should work actually. So you can load them from the package server, but obviously that would be whichever version is on the package server. And that might not be the latest development version. Well, hopefully it isn't. So if you want to load packages locally though, you can use this environment variable, Meteor package dirs. So if you run your app like this, Meteor package dirs equals with wherever you have your Vulkan packages, it will load them from there. And then what I did in my case is I made an alias using the bash profile file to just store this so I don't have to retype it every time. And that's actually something we're going to add to the CLI. So it's not in the documentation yet, but there is a Vulkan start command which will do all of that for you, and you can configure where you want the command to look for the packages. So in other words, you'll be able to just download a repo that only has the relevant code to that specific project, and then either load Vulkan packages from the package server, or if you want to have them locally, use Vulkan start, just set it up, point it to your local directory, and that's where it will take its packages from. So I think it will make the whole local workflow a lot easier. Now, one small downside is that, you know, if you have 2 people working on the same code base, you have to ensure that you both use the same version of the main Vulkan packages, because otherwise you might get inconsistencies or bugs. But that shouldn't be too hard, right? Just make sure you're always on the latest master or latest devel, and maybe we can show you an error if that's not the case. But overall, I think it will be a big improvement for the Vulkan workflow. So going back to our project, so we registered the test email last time. We sent the test, we displayed it using mail catcher, so I'm gonna start it up again. And so we're gonna do the same thing, but this time instead of just sending out the email via the console, we're gonna hook it up so that it sends out on a specific event. So I'll need to remember how exactly this works because I haven't done it in a while, but we have our emails here, and the one we wanted to send right, is whenever a new room is added. So let's think about this. So the first thing we'll need to do is actually register the email like we did for test. So right here at emails, we'll say template rooms new path. So this is just the path at which we can preview the email. Subject. So after that, we indicate how to get the properties of the email, how to get its subject, and how to get test properties. So I guess this would be should probably be named get test properties. I think it will be more logical. And so what's get test properties and get properties? Well, we'll look at a real email to see the difference. So for example, here in Vulkan notifications, emails, and get properties is a function that will take, so let's say that we want to send an email about a new user. So it will take a user object and return the properties. Now, this works when we are passing a specific user because they did an action. But when we just want to test the email, we don't really have a user to pass, so that's why we have a different get test user actually no, I'm wrong. Okay, it is get test object because this only gets the user object that will get passed to get properties. So in other words, this takes a user object and returns the properties needed by the email, and this gets a test object when you just want to test the email, but it's not like you don't have a specific user to pass. Right, okay, I remember now. So let's copy this as inspiration for rooms new. So get properties. We want to get the properties of a room. And I guess for now, this might change later, but let's just say let's just return the room itself. And then get test object, we'll do this will just get us a random room, like the first one in the database, and we'll just return that. So here, get test user is a bit more complex because it supports testing with a specific user ID, which I don't think we need. So let's see if this works. And the subject will say, so subject can take a function, or it is a function, and I think this would be room. So I think we want to do something like that. So let's see how this works. And then we'll have to look at the actual template here. So we won't have any username field for now. And we won't have any of these actually. So I'll just remove them to avoid having any errors. And we should be passing the room to this, so the room does have a name. Yeah, so that should work. Okay, let's see. Gonna read. Okay, emails 19. Yeah. So I'm not yet thinking about how to trigger the emails. I just want to test them out in the email admin. Okay, we can check the template. Foo has added a new room. Okay, that looks right. The preview rooms is not defined, of course. I think we need to import it here. and that would be rooms collection. I guess we're not using, are we using, already forgot. Yeah, we are using semicolons. Now, a lot of this will change actually in the near future because we'll use GraphQL for that. So, okay, well, it works. So you can see two things. First, that the HTML template has been filled out with the right information, the name, and then right here below, you can see all the properties passed to the email, which in this case is the room itself. Now, you notice that there were some things like username, room URL, and so on, which are not passed. And that's because they're not properties of the room object. So in the past, that's what getProperties was for. So here I would do something like this. User, so users, and then find a user. So that's what I would do in the past, and I may need to do that here as well. But what would make a lot more sense, I think, is actually to use GraphQL for this. So, you know, rather than do this whole thing here, just add a username field on the room schema. So here, just like we have a user ID, which resolves as user. Well, actually, yeah, I mean, we could either do user gets display name room.user with the current user field that we have, or even like add a username field at the root of the schema. But I think doing like user dot get display name room.user, or even room.user.display name, something like this, is probably more correct from a syntax point of view. So actually I want to check if okay, so I want to check something in the users schema, so I have to switch to the core Vulkan project. So the display name is defined as a field. But yeah, I think that would work. So we should do here, this should ideally be room.user.displayName. Now this won't work. Well, I guess this might work, but it really depends on where this thing comes from, right? Here in getTestObject, if we just did this, so it would work for well, no, it wouldn't work, because why wouldn't it work? Because the property that's stored in the database is user ID, it's not user. User comes from a resolver. So what this means is we need to use, instead of just hitting the database directly, we need to use GraphQL. So, and this is kind of, well, it's not complicated really, but it's something I haven't done. We basically need to do a GraphQL query from the server to the server. So I probably don't want to start doing this right now. So for now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use hard-coded values, and I'll just, you know, figure out how to do it later. So properties, I'm gonna say so I'm gonna go back to this, and then I'll fill out name, profile URL, and the other one was room URL. And so actually we'll put this here. Well, you know what, let's just do this. Okay, so you can see that the object that is passed to the template is much simpler because we're not returning room, we're just returning this object. And again, the reason why we are doing this and not just doing room.findOne is that instead of using findOne and getting the room from the database, ultimately we want to get the room from our GraphQL schema, which will then get it from the database, but in the process resolving the fields properly. So rather than using findOne, which we'll have to remove anyway, I'll just use a static object like this. Now, of course, it means that yeah, this get properties thing won't really do anything for now, but in the future, you know, it might actually, we might not even need it really, because well, maybe the object we pass to the template already has all these fields, or at least maybe you know, if not profile URL, then room.user.profile URL. So we don't need to have that extra step, and that's actually, I think, something that would make a ton of sense. So I'll probably, yeah, like I said, I'll implement it later, and then once I have everything figured out, the next video I'll go over that code. But for now, we don't need to worry about this, so we'll just have this static email template. And well, we want to figure out how to trigger it. And so I might just reuse the maybe the room name. So when we pass the real properties, yeah, okay, I'm gonna change it once more, sorry. So I'm gonna do it like this. So get test object, I'm just gonna do so this will return the room, and this will get a room, and do this. Okay, so this way, when we're actually testing with a real room, we can at least just pass, you know, get the name, and then we know that we're getting the right okay, the right thing. So we need to hook up this email being sent to the new room action, and we can do that using callbacks. So I guess I'll split callbacks by a collection. So I'll create a new file here. I'm gonna import it here. And to know what to put inside, I'm gonna look at the notification package. And here it is, add new post notification callback on post submit. So that's more or less what we want to do, but for rooms. So we want to add it on the async callback of rooms. What async means is asynchronous. In other words, we won't hold up the rest of the code. So when you click that submit button, there's a bunch of stuff that happens on the server, and then once that's done, it returns an object to the client, and then the submission is done. So that bunch of stuff can include callbacks and validation and so on, but we don't want to wait for the email to send out before returning the new document, because it doesn't really, sending the email is kind of independent, it doesn't impact the client. So that's why we make it async, so it doesn't hold up the mutation operation. Hey, Office ABG in the chat, hey, what's up? Let me know if you have any questions, if I'm going too fast, too slow, too boring, too interesting. I don't know. So, do we need to do this? We need to get, well, we need to know who we should notify. And that's important, like who do we send the email to? And here we're sending it to admins. So yeah, I think that makes sense. And here, in addition, we can also, in the post package, you can also subscribe to be notified of new posts. But here, I think only admins need to be notified. That's fine. So notification data, we want a room, and we'll just reuse. So this will be a room. So this will be name. So we want to use the real name, and then for the rest, we'll just copy this. Or actually, no, this will get added automatically, so we can just do that. Okay, perfect. We'll call that rooms new notification. Remove post other ID. So this is so users are not notified of the room they created themselves. Let's not do that because I'm the only user right now. So if I do that, I won't receive anything. And there's something with the post status, which doesn't apply. So admin IDs, new room, or rooms new, I think it's called, and notification data. Now we don't have this create notification thing here, but at the same time it doesn't do that much, so I don't know if I want to add the whole notifications package just for that. So let's see what it does. Basically it iterates over a set of user IDs, and then for each one it gets the email and sends the email. So I think we can just copy this here, and we'll see if we need to use that somewhere else. If there's lots of duplicate code, we can always change it. But here we want to, we can call it user IDs. Okay, for each, take a user ID, find the user. We need to do all that. We definitely need to get the user email. Again, that's something that should be done through GraphQL ultimately. Basically, wherever you see a find one and it's not inside a resolver, that's like a code smell. That's a sign that we're doing something wrong in the in the new architecture where we're using GraphQL. Those are all leftovers from before when we didn't have GraphQL. So email, that's the okay. The email is this thing, so we do want to get that. And in this case, it would be rooms new. We won't have that. We get the properties. Can call this data. Subject. Yeah, we want to get the subject, so based on, we want to, right, so what get notification does, it kind of calls this and all that to figure things out. That could be in the email package, I would guess. Actually, I'm gonna look at the code for the email package real quick. So there's a few different things we can use. There's build template, which takes HTML and property. No, that's for the main template. That's not what we want. There's send, but that takes raw HTML. So we want to apply the template. So that would be build and send, which takes two the email we're sending to, subject, template, properties. Okay, so here we can do this, I think. So users get email, we already have it here. Subject, okay. And then template. So is it the template or is it the template name? So I think that's actually a template name, because we call get template on it, and get template does take the template name. Okay, and the template name is email.template. Makes sense. And properties is, well, properties. So we don't need that. And I think we can keep that just so we don't try to send emails to users that don't have emails. Let's save. Let's see if we get any no errors. I'm actually gonna add a console log just so I know that the callback is triggering. And yeah, I'll add just to know who we're sending the email to. And then we can try inserting a new room now. I guess doing it on the new room thing hook is not ideal, because we'll have to insert new content every time. I'm just gonna put it on the edit hook for now. So edit takes, let's review the parameters. Callbacks. So edit callback takes a modifier and then a post. So in this case, I'll just change this. Okay. I'll switch it back to new later, but this is just a way to make it easier to test. Oh, add callback is not defined. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's import it. Reload, pick a room, and edit it. Oh, document is not defined. So, okay, that's something unrelated. Yesterday I was working on the form validation code, and I guess something crept in. No, it's definitely my fault. Well, actually, no, this project. Yeah, I thought this project had linting and like. Okay. So I don't know why this is not. If document is not defined, which it doesn't seem to be, I don't know why it's not highlighted. But anyway, where do we get that document from? I think it shouldn't be too hard to pass it, maybe. Let's do this. Modifier document, and here modifier document. Collection.simpleSchema is not a function. Maybe collection is not defined. That seems possible. Although I'm not sure why that would be. Modifier document collection context. Collection context, that seems okay. Well, I guess it worked this time. Exception and defer callback. So that's in our callbacks file. Users is not defined. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so I apologize for having these really dumb errors, which would get caught by good linting, but I always say I'm going to do it and then I forget. In general, I feel I have a really hard time finding the time and energy to just improve my setup generally. Like, I know some people really obsess over their text editor and stuff, but I'm always just trying to just refactor and improve the code, and I don't spend much time improving my tools, which is a mistake, I think. Okay, a new room has been created and defined. Cool. Almost what we wanted except for that undefined part. And I think it's because we pass data with a room property, and here we expect the room directly. Now, yeah, like I said, I will probably get rid of this. But that being said, it's useful to be able to have the possibility to pass not just one object, but let's say a room and maybe a user and maybe something else. Like, you could want to show two unrelated documents in the same email. So, let's say, a completely random example, let's say you have a notification, but you also want to show a small footer in your email with the latest news section. So that would be a case where you want to have both a room and a latest news, like item in your email. And so in this case, you would do room this and then news that. What I mean is here, like, news wouldn't be a field on room. So that's why I'm not just passing the room directly. Okay, let's try again. Nice. So presumably all we need to do is put this back on new, and we'll have our new room notification. Now, some of that code is a bit redundant, like figuring out the subject, properties, email, and so on. So it seems like I should improve this, right? So instead of taking two subject template name properties, it should take just two email and then properties. And then we figure out the rest from the email object. So we would remove this. And then where do we get the template name? Email.template. So we get the email, we get the, well, do we even need the properties? Well, I guess we just pass the data directly, right? So that makes a lot more sense. We pass the who we want to send the email to, the email object, and then the data applied to the email, and then this build and send function figures out the rest. And this really simplifies our code. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And email is going to be the same for everybody, so we can put it here. We can do this. Yeah, I think that's a lot better. And this way we don't need this like create, what was it, create notification function, which, so I'm gonna modify it here as well. Well, I'll users get email, so we can just use that. So that was email, and this was data. So this, so we can remove this, we can remove this, and we can remove this, and then do this. Perfect. I'm going to double check if I'm not using this anywhere else, because that would obviously break. No, I'm defining it here and then using it here. Okay, cool. Okay, so let me test. Let's test with a new room this time for real. So room, that was weird. House. Let's pick something of Airbnb. It's always good to test with like real-ish data, because you can get a feel for how everything works. You know, like don't put this in the number of beds, you know, because it will break the layout and it's not realistic. So I like to also use real photos. You just get used to, you know, how things work and what makes sense for the design. It's not really my style. Like, I like wood, but that's a bit heavy maybe. I like wooden floors, but for the walls, probably use something else. If you're asking me, which you probably aren't. So let's upload this, confirming that our upload thing, which we worked on last week or 2 weeks ago, still works. Submit, and oh, we have an error. Description is too long. Price per night is required, and this thing is because I'm still using a simple schema to validate, and for now I just like make it throw this like generic error. But once everything is okay, so it erased everything because yes, the redirect is not working. So let's fix that. We do not want to close the model because it's not inside the model. But don't worry, I think pretty sure that our room was created properly. I mean, I say that, but okay, yeah. Oh, so yeah, we wanted to check the so it doesn't seem. So I'm like, did I get some errors? Cannot read property name of undefined. That sucks. Okay, I guess. So this, wait. This would also get data and not room, so this should also be by data room name. So I have a question. If you use Meteor authentication, do you use the Meteor way of retrieving the user? So yes, right now the user is retrieved via DDP. So if you do this, like the user is here, so Meteor knows about the user. In the future, we want to get rid of this altogether and use, or maybe not get rid of, I don't know, but in any case, we want to send the user via GraphQL like everything else. But for now, it's everything that's about the current user accounts is 100% Meteor. As far as the I don't know what you'd call it, the data transfer and the account management. Now, obviously, like the UI, the user login account UI, that's React, that's part of Vulkan, but the back end of that is Meteor. For now, cannot read property map of null. That's because we don't have what you call it. Well, I guess we don't have any amenities, so that's a problem. We also don't have a map, but that should be okay. Okay, cool. Let's create a new room, I guess. It's funny that now like Airbnb is about experiences. They want to upsell you, I guess. Berlin. Wow, that looks nice. Yeah, I would live there for sure. Wow, that's much better than my current place in Osaka for sure. Actually, if you had a place like this in Japan, that's like means you're probably in the top 1,000 richest people in the world, or in Japan, I mean. That's definitely not what the average Japanese apartment looks like. And there's a lot of great things in Japan, but like, I would say like interior design and like having great living spaces is not really one of them. Still the same problem. Well, I guess I'll figure this out later. Like, let me review how I'm passing that subject. Oh, because properties. Oh, okay. Let me get back to the let me retest real quick. I kind of want to get this sorted out. I guess it's already getting the properties, so that's wrong, right? Yeah, I mean, this is not like yeah, it's not the best approach. As you can see, it's quite confusing to get the data and then make it go through this kind of transform function. Cool, and now it works. Yeah, so this should be, rather than get test object, it should be get test data, I guess. Because like I said, the data can have multiple objects. Anyway, for now, let's put it back on new and just assume it works. So cool. You've seen how to send emails. If you need to remember one thing is first to define your email, and knowing that this is probably gonna change. So how would it change? Well, I think we'll ultimately get rid of this because, well, the object you pass will already have all these fields like on it, so you won't need to do this step of figuring out the username, the room URL, profile URL. So that's one difference, and then the other difference, yeah, that's how it will change. And then the other thing to remember is build and send. That's changed a bit, so I'll update the documentation. But I think by the third video, the next video in this series about emails, things will be a bit more consolidated, and maybe I can show you the new, like, fancy GraphQL way of doing the same thing. So stay tuned and see you soon.